On the other hand, my relatives could pour into his face, devoid of its charms, filled with nothing and capacious, into the depths of eyes that had lost their charm, a vague and sweet sediment, half alive, half forgotten, left over from the hours of leisure spent weekly with him after dinner in the garden or at the card table, at the time of our oral good neighborliness. The corporeal shell of our friend was so saturated with all this, as well as the memories of his parents, that this Swan became a complete and living being, and I get the impression that I am parting with one person and leaving for another, unlike him, when, straining my memory, I pass from that Swan, whom I later knew well, to the first Swan. In him I again recognize the captivating delusions of my youth, and, by the way, he looks not so much like the second Swan, but like other people, with whom I was then familiar with. One might think that our life is a museum, where all the portraits of one era have a family resemblance, a common tone, to the first Swan, exuding leisure, smelling of tall chestnut, raspberries and, a little bit, dragon grass. However, one day, when my grandmother asked the Marquis de Villeparisis, from the noble family of Bouillon, whom she met in Sacré-Cœur, and with whom, in accordance with our idea of castes, despite mutual sympathy, she did not want to maintain relations, the Marquis said to her, "If I'm not mistaken, you're on good terms with Swan, a close friend of my nephew's named Dillam." Grandmother returned delighted with the house overlooking the garden. The Marquis de Villeparisis advised her to rent an apartment here, and also with the waistcoat and his daughter, who had an establishment in the yard and where, having torn her skirt on the stairs, she went to ask to mend it. To my grandmother, these people seemed the height of perfection. She announced that the baby was a real treasure, and that she had never met such well-mannered, such nice people as a waistcoat. The fact is that good breeding, in her opinion, did not at all depend on social status. She admired one answer of the waistcoat and said to her mother, "So you wouldn't tell Sévigné." But about the nephew of the Marquis de Villeparisis, whom she saw with her, the grandmother responded like this: "Ah, daughter, how ordinary he is." The words of the Marquis de Villeparisis about Swan did not raise him in the eyes of my great-aunt, and the Marquis de Villeparisis was humiliated. It seemed that the respect that we, relying on my grandmother, had for the Marquis de Villeparisis, obliged her not to drop her dignity in our eyes, but she dropped it, because she knew about the existence of Swan and allowed her relatives to hang out with him. How? Does she know Swan? And you still assure me that she is related to Marshal MacMahon. The opinion of my relatives about Swan's acquaintances was strengthened, as they believed, by his marriage to a woman from a bad society, almost a cocotte, whom, however, he did not try to present to us, continuing to be alone, although less and less, but who seemed to give them the ability to judge an environment unknown to them, and yet they assumed that he took it from there, where he constantly rotated. But then one day grandfather read in the newspaper that Swan was a regular visitor to Sunday breakfasts at Duke X, whose father and uncle held the highest posts under Louis Philippe. It should be noted that grandfather showed a special curiosity for all sorts of small facts that helped him mentally penetrate the private lives of people like Mole, like the Duke of Paquia, like the Duke of Broye. He was happy that Swan was meeting people who knew them,